it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It looks like you're in a cupboard or something.
Yeah. No.
Oh dear.
Right. Hopefully we say hopefully yes. It's always interesting what bits you can hear. Okay. So if any students are on, we will be starting in 3 minutes. We will be starting in about 3 minutes. Just bear with us. Right, I'm going to remove the non-participants.
James, are you going to give me a countdown, or shall I just start at 1:45?
Yeah, just start. I'd say just start. Course. Well, I'll have a look and see how many are on in a second.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we already have a fair few people on, which is great.
Brilliant.
Welcome, welcome. Yeah, Tracy, I'll sort of mute myself and leave, and yeah, you start when you feel. I'll sort of message you with any dramas, and good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Okay. Just leave it another minute or so. The class will be starting shortly. Okay. Right, I think we're ready to go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Level 2 live YouTube assembly. Today we have two very interesting speakers. We have Keith and Vanessa, so thank you very much for joining us today and giving us your time. And what I just really want to do is just have a chat with you really and just ask you about your career journey, and if you have any experiences that you would like to share with our Monoux students. And remember, we have students from across all the different pathways. These students are their first year here with us at Monoux. So if I can start with you, Vanessa, and just wanted to really just, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief overview of your career journey and maybe any experiences that you've had so far that you would like to share with our students.
Yeah, so I started very young as an entrepreneur, building up my own dog walking business. I've always been within a family of self-employment, so it was never really an option to become an employee for a massive company because I was brought up with self-made people. My parents ended up millionaires. They were jewelers, unfortunately lost it all as the financial crashes have happened through to change of governments and things like that. So even though we had it, we lost it all. And of course, the whole family would have suffered through that. As I tried to change, as our lifestyles changed all the time, education was never one of my favourite things. So I failed at school. The only GCSE I got was an A-star in drama. There was a lot of other factors that surrounded my education and what was happening to me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And I ended up being given a scholarship for the Italia Conte, which is a massive performing arts school. I was very lucky. Unfortunately, my parents didn't want me to go. And so because they didn't see any kind of work ethic in dancing, drama, but that was my part. So that was sort of cut out for me. So any art students, any students going into media, any students going into tech, you have to look at the people that have already made it. You need to see where the influences lie that lie with you and where you feel you want to be. Also, when I was going through this journey, I ended up falling in a very, very negative state, which is it's not a very good situation to be in. The more, as you well know, especially through social media, with probably a majority of you accessing it so easily nowadays, is that there's positivity everywhere. but there's a certain level of positivity when you're in a very negative state that you can actually handle and deal with. So try and stay in your own lane. An artist, you know that you're not going to make it overnight. Tech companies are always looking for that next best thing. So always being innovative. The sports industry, I can talk till the cows come home. I got into the fitness industry because I was a dancer. I didn't get to the drama school, so I ended up doing, back in my day, it was podium nightclubs, not stripper dancing or pole dancing, but the podiums, and it was a massive big deal in Ibiza as well. And there was lots of different things going on in the late noughties. With the music was changing, the industry was booming for nightclubs and outdoor festivals and things like that. So that's how I got into constantly keeping fit. But it was a very, very unhealthy relationship with food, lack of money, and a very bad relationship with myself. So I always trained, but it was always on a cardio aspect. So for those of you doing your level 2 BTEC in fitness, you're already going to understand the difference between the different levels of training. With all of that said, I've always been a big girl. So as soon as I didn't build enough muscle, then doing the cardio just made me the opposite version. I was just a skinnier version of my fat self. So I would constantly go through that cycle in life. With my past, again, not dealing with it, that brought on a lot of eating disorders and a lot of issues there. So you're constantly trying to plow through this negativity. See what I was saying at the beginning. With all of that, after having my children, like a lot of women, very, very specific demographic, you want to work from home. And so that's how I got into personal training. It's a minefield. It's very heavy. It's heavy going, but it is business. And so if you do not understand about business, whether you're an employee or whether you're self-employed or whether you become some kind of employee through market research or sales or something like that for a different company, but you're working for yourself, then you still have to understand the fundamentals of business, because you will fail. That even goes to whether you're becoming an artist, whether you're going into media. You have to learn to sell yourself, and it comes from a place of self-worth. So the questions I always ask my students is, this is not going to be forever. You have to understand that what you're learning now is factors of the beginning of your start. It's not going to be for the rest of your life. And I think Keith, the other speaker here, and I can both quite easily say that. Keith will speak his story. And don't be afraid of your tutors, because they are human, and we get really frightened of speaking to them because we think they're just an art teacher or they're just into business. But ask them why and how, and ask them originally, what were their dreams at the beginning? Why are they doing what they do? Why did they become and get interested in the subjects they did? Because you don't become a teacher without loving what you do. Because you want to share that gift and that love with everybody else, especially with health and social care right now. Things are changing for you so much, and you're becoming, you're expected to know so much in how the NHS and the different kind of healthcare systems work in this country. So there's a lot of pressure, and you need to find your niche as well, which is a huge business concept. So that's how it's gone from me. I've gone from all different walks of life and all different levels of business. And the other one I would say is, please don't focus on the money, because if you're going to be influenced by what you see on Instagram, again, from that negative place, you will always feel like there's never enough. You will always feel like your artwork is not good enough. Health and social care, sports, you will always feel like you're not serving enough. In media, you'll miss out on amazing job opportunities because you feel like it's not good enough for me, it's not enough. There's always going to be a point where you have to sort of overcome that, and there are so many different factors you can look into, and that's how it went for me, up down all the time.
Oh wow, I mean, that's so insightful. I mean, all those really positive messages. Hopefully the students are really getting this, and that's great to hear. So we're going to ask you some more questions. You can go into a little bit more detail in a minute, but so Keith, would you be able to kind of give us an overview of your career journey so far?
Absolutely. But I love doing these speeches because we usually do them two up, and I usually go second, and then I always feel incredibly humbled by what I've heard before because my journey feels boring by comparison. So thanks for that, Vanessa. I'm sat here with my mouth open in awe. So thanks very much for that. It's brilliant. So I guess where should I start? I'm cognizant of the people we've got on the call today, Tracy, but I was born and brought up in very working class Liverpool, born and brought up on a council estate, which was absolutely, that was my life. It's kind of what I knew, certainly for the first 11 years of my life before I went to grammar school. And I wouldn't want anybody to misconstrue that because I had a fabulous time. And I didn't know. All you know is what you know, right? All you know is your environment. So for me, I never felt underprivileged or lacking in opportunity, whatever, because at that age, it's all about playing football and having a laugh with your mates. And I had a lot of fun. But I was lucky enough, I guess, to be born with a bit of a brain. And I went to selected to go to a great grammar school, a really strict grammar school as well. Catholic, I'm Catholic. So we were taught by Christian brothers, so it was a very strict religion. And my kind of school journey was a really interesting one because I loved school, but actually for the most part, I loved school because it was a good laugh. I wasn't the best student, certainly not for the first 5 years. And I've always been a challenger of authority, always have been. Not because I'm naturally rebellious, I'm not. I'm just inquisitive, and I always wanted to understand the why. And unfortunately, I went to a school where they were not really interested in telling you the why. They were just interested in telling you the what and just shut up and get on with it. And that wasn't me. So I rubbed up really badly progressively in the first 5 years of my secondary school, almost to the point where the headmaster wanted to kick me out, but he couldn't really kick me out because I'd not really done anything wrong other than I just was challenging. And so we called them O levels in my day, but GCSEs. My GCSEs went very good. In comparison to the school, I only got 8, and I went to a religious school. And I was having a laugh with a friend last week. I must be one of the only kids who went to a religious school who actually failed religion O level. I'm actually quite proud of that, and in a perverse kind of way, because that's a pretty difficult thing to do. My sliding doors moment though was we got a new headmaster. So when I went into the sixth form, we got a new headmaster, and he was a PhD in psychology from Cambridge, and he was brilliant, and he kind of saved my life in many ways because he suddenly really liked me because he was very happy to explain stuff. Rather than just say, shut up and get on with it. Don't ask me any questions. And I blossomed as a result. So I went from being in the kind of bottom half, if you like, to being right near the tops because I worked hard, and suddenly, he lit my fuse, and I owe him an awful great debt to this day. So I was thankful for that. And that was then my trigger to go on to university. Nobody in my family had ever been to university before. As you probably understand, the Catholic and the Liverpool bit, massive family. My mum was one of 10, my dad was one of 7. And I was the first one out of all the family to ever go to university. And I didn't have a clue. I didn't have anybody who I could talk to. We had a bit of a career service in school. But I guess the two pertinent bits of my background were because of where I lived, the women didn't work. They were all housewives. The men did jobs like my dad, he was a lorry driver, career lorry driver, or they were electricians or plumbers or bricklayers or whatever. That's what they did, worked in factories. By the way, I'm not criticizing any of that. That's all really great stuff. But that was my home world. My school world was one of where they basically just tried to manage you into one of the classic professions, through university into becoming a doctor or a dentist or a lawyer or a teacher. That's kind of where they did. And I was like, none of those appeals. Either world doesn't really appeal to me. So I didn't have a clue, quite frankly. But what I did, and I think this is quite important, is I had a real passion. I did economics at A level, and I had a real passion for economics. I loved understanding how the country worked and politics behind it. And so that's what I chose to do at university. I did an economics and management studies degree because I had an inkling I wanted to go into the business world. And I chose correctly. So I really enjoyed the subject matter. And that then gave me the spark to, after university, I moved to London. I got a real lucky break. Probably the luckiest break I got in my life was I got offered a job by Mars Confectionery, which is where I met the guy who sets up Working Options. His name is Paul Monk. I'd never before worked among such talent, and picking up on Vanessa's point, drive. You know, these people were driven. They wanted to achieve goals. And that was a real wake-up call for me, because it kind of said, well, you've got the potential, Sunshine, you've got the talent, but actually if you don't apply yourself properly, you're not going to achieve what you're capable of. And that was because that was brilliant, and that penny dropped with me. And because if I'm honest, until then I'd spent 22 years of my life kind of ambling along, because I was pretty clever and I was pretty good at sport, and I never used to have to try that hard at either to pass or win or whatever. But joining Mars was like, this isn't good enough, Sunshine. Brilliant. And from then on, that really instilled a work ethic in me. And so my career then, since then, has basically been pretty classic, you know, just one of constant, steady progression. When I gave up my corporate career 6 years ago, I was MD of Northern Europe for the third biggest sports company in the world, after Nike and Adidas, a company called AMA Sports. So I got pretty high, I guess, when it comes to career. But like Vanessa, you know, I made some spectacular failures along the way. I've made a couple of shocking career choices, and I've been in the right place at the right times. I've been in the wrong place at the wrong times. And so, you know, whilst my life has clearly not been anything like Vanessa's roller coaster, it's been a mini version. Stuff will go wrong, and you know what? One of my big messages, Tracy, is that's fine. I read a statistic a few years ago, which was really reassuring, actually, a psychology study, which said, you know what? More than 2/3 of what we learn through life, we learn through failure, not through instant success. And I think that's a really healthy thing to get your head around, because it encourages you to try. You know, I'm a big believer in you won't know. You don't want to get to my age. I'm nearly 57. Nobody wants to get to my age in life thinking, I wonder what would happen if, you know, give it a whirl, give it a shot. If it fails, you can always recover. You can always recover if you want to. If you're prepared to dust yourself off, get back up, be proactive, try something else, you can always recover. I mean, fascinating just listening to Vanessa and the various things that she's done. My path has been a lot steadier than that.
Yeah.
But I totally concur with her on, you know, take control of yourself, really. Don't be afraid to try. Don't be afraid to fail. And don't be afraid to, you know, to take risks. You find out so much more about yourself doing that than you do if you just take the safe option all the time. So that's probably
that sounds
it
very
from me, Tracy.
yeah, great. I mean, very wise words. Definitely. So just thinking then, Vanessa, if we just asking you to think about your time when you were sort of at college, say, you know, 17 and a half age group. So what you know now, do you wish that you would have done anything differently from that time when you were in college? What sort of nuggets of you know, experience could our students hear from you now, what you would have done differently?
Well, for me, first of all, it was a difficult time. 16 years old, I left home. My mum and dad didn't want me at home anymore. I was very heavily involved in gangs, and so I was a drugs mule. So I was very heavily involved in that. I was put on a partnership program from school. I went to, like Keith, I went to a Catholic all-girls school because my parents believed that was the best education you could get. So it was failure from day one, as I said from the beginning. When I was put in the partnership program, God will always show up in different ways. And I ended up being blessed with this tutor called Eben. She was a Rastafarian. And she was incredibly laid back and relaxed, and it was the person that I needed. She put me through a program with maths and English, so I gained my functional skills level 2 maths and English, which is what I needed. That then got me into art and design. My original plan was to become an interior designer, and for all those art students out there, I can't draw. However, through the first year, so it was a level 2 at the time. It was a GMVQ. That's all changed now, and it was a GMVQ in art and design, which was my gateway to becoming an art student at the London College of Art. As I've already said to you, I can't draw, and I was, as you could tell, very active. So trying to focus on my work was difficult, but an interior designer is able to work with textiles and different kind of textures and things like that, and I can put things together. And I remember what money I came from. So I came from these lavish interior designs, and my mum was amazing at it. She would have been an amazing designer. So with all this in mind, and the business that was going on privately, I ended up getting arrested. I was then put on license. I was on tag. My tutors changed. And so whilst I was an art student, this amazing woman, another one, she stepped forward, told me that she was a teenage mum. She was born into a sort of a hippie cult. So she understood what mess mentally I was in. Ended up pregnant, had to leave college early to have my child. I was on license. The whole thing was a nightmare. My mentors were my tutors. Do I regret anything I've done? No. And I don't think we ever should, because everything I am now, if you're a young teenage pregnant young woman, which thank God is very far and few between nowadays. It's not as big as what it was when I was younger. So we've got that right. Getting involved in the wrong people is always a learning curve when we're going through a very egotistic phase. When we're between that 16 to 19 years, we're all finding our way, which is why, the colleges do so much for students, because they open up doorways for art, business, health and social care. You get to have that choice. I feel sometimes it's too much choice. I feel sometimes we have to make mistakes in order to learn, like we said earlier. That's the bottom line. You got to think, well, all right, so she couldn't draw, but I could draw at the end of the course. I did amazing work, and my work was put out for the first time ever as a student in my life. I was dyslexic. You can imagine what sort of student I was. I was the nightmare student. I was just hell to deal with, because I was all over the place. But by the time I became an adult, I learned to sort of calm down a bit, and as I expressed myself through my artwork, it became better. So it's practice, 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 practice. And even though I had all these hurdles in the way, it became my safe haven. So again, another lesson. Where do you feel safe? Because at that point in time, once you become perfect at it, like 100 press-ups, like getting a higher level on the bleep test when you're doing your fitness practice in your course, health and social care, you become better at writing plans, you understand that person more. Tech, science, it's practice all the time. In the end, I was told that no way would I make it into art college, forget it. So my tutor realised that I liked to be with people. And so because I had my daughter, I couldn't become a midwife or a nurse. I went into beauty therapy, and I did beauty therapy level 2. It took me years to do level 3. After that, I was lucky enough to get some funding, which again, unfortunately, it's changed. So make sure you get the absolute best out of your funding right up until you're 19. Again, tutors will help you with all of that. But then I ended up doing beauty therapy level 3 that I paid for myself. And then everything after that, Keith will tell you as well, everything after that you pay for yourself. So again, you need to be really strategic. You need a plan. But don't ever, ever, ever give up. Even if you get a project and you don't like it, Keith will tell you, in the corporate world, there are many things that you get asked to do and you don't want to do them. But again, that's why school and college, I realised going back as a tutor, as a mentor, as a TA back in the schools and helping students that have got criminal records, that are in detention centres and things like that. I've worked with all different kinds of students. We are all human. And we all make the most sometimes unforgiving mistakes to some people. But as long as we're learning from them and making them better, you will always succeed. Always, always, always succeed.
Yeah, excellent advice. Definitely. Thank you. And Keith, so for you, what would be your one thing or few things that actually would have made a difference for what you know now to your 16, 17-year-old self?
It's a great question, isn't it? But by the way, you know, I'm happy ultimately with the decisions I made. I'm going to give you an example of some of the stuff in a minute, but I think get as much input as you can, get as much advice and get rounded advice as you can. Why do I say that? Because again, I go back to, you know, when I was 16, 17, coming from a family where nobody had been into the sixth form or let alone gone on to university. I realized I couldn't rely on my family for the sort of advice I was after. And because of the school I went to, their advice was very narrow. Now, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media in those days, we didn't have the kind of television that we have now to inform us. But actually, if I think back, we didn't have libraries. You know, we had a fantastic library in the centre of Liverpool, absolutely brilliant. So actually, I had access to material. I just needed to access it in a different way. And so I probably would have done more research before I kind of made the choices. I still think I made the right choice. I think that's really important. But why do I say that? Because ultimately, I think the most important thing, Tracy, is to, and it's, you know, Vanessa's clearly doing this as well, is pursue what you're passionate about. Because at the end of the day, you know, drive and energy and happiness, they come from the heart. They don't come from the head. You know, the stuff that inspires you, the stuff that will make you give of your best, is the stuff that you enjoy the most, the stuff you enjoy doing the most. Now, you might not have found that yet, but you might have some ideas, or something might intrigue you. You know, it could be drama school in Vanessa's case. You know what? Go for it. I had a case where I was doing one of these a few months ago, and there was this lovely girl, really lovely girl, and she was the daughter of immigrants. She'd come over from, the family had come over from the West Indies, and as a result, her mum and dad were obsessed by education, and they wanted her to become a lawyer. And I said, and when she told me she wanted to become a lawyer, I could see, you know, in her eyes that that's not what she wanted to be. And I said to her, what do you want to be? She said, I want to study English. And I'm like, go and persuade your mum to let you do English. You know, because it's clear to me that you do not want to contemplate becoming a lawyer. You can't, you've got to find what you're passionate about, because that's what will make you happy. And that's the most important thing of all. Yeah. That's where fulfillment and drive and ambition all come from.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely excellent advice, and I absolutely concur with that. It's, unless you're happy, you're not going to do well in something, and you won't have that drive and commitment for that. I've actually got a question that's come through from one of the students. So I don't know whether, Vanessa, you might want to have a go at this one, and maybe Keith, you could also maybe add something to it. We've got Ahmed. He's worried about his maths GCSE. He's having to retake it, and he's worried that actually he wants to go to university, but he's concerned that maybe his maths would hold him back. Would you have any advice or tips about that?
Absolutely. So what you need to look at first of all is, where have you failed within your maths? Because using the word failure, I hate it. So have a look where the weakness is. That's what we use, the word weakness. So change the vocabulary that you're using. That's the first thing. So you're not failing. It's just that we're not amazing at everything. We're not supposed to be. So where is the weakest point of your mathematics that you're struggling with? Just because you failed your GCSE, it doesn't mean that you can't do anything else. My partner, for example, is a welder. He's brilliant at maths. He's become really run down with his job. It's not a glamorous job, welding. And so he's decided that he's going to do his HNC in civil engineering. Civil engineering comes with maths that you did back in year 8 at school, way before your GCSEs. So you've got balance and different kinds of measurements and force and polarity and all things that he's got to go through again. It's woken him up, but he's also found his weaknesses. So what are you going to do? You're going to write your weaknesses down. You're going to go and find your tutors, because they're all here to help you in where and what you can do in order to strengthen that part of your maths. Always, time is not precious. It's something that we have to live by. So schedule, not hours and hours and hours. Think about time where you're in a headspace where you can think about that particular part of your maths. Where are you able to strengthen that part of your maths? Then you have, again, your tutors, head of year will be able to direct you in the points that you need. The education system has changed, well, just tenfold since Keith and I were at school. But your BTEC has points, your MVQs give you points. It all leads to A levels. I have three level 3s, and that all accumulates to A levels. That's got me into many different kinds of jobs. So please don't say I'm failing at this. Have a look at where the weaknesses are, work on the weaknesses, and like Keith said earlier, speak to the right people and make as many notes as you can. Again, you lot are so lucky because you don't have to go to the library and sit in the library for hours. You've got YouTube, you've got Google. And even though we mustn't take that information as truth from the internet, do your own research. So always find the information on YouTube and then extend your research from there. And there's books everywhere now. So there will be somebody out there that can help you, and find like-minded stories, because you'll find, I'm doing my degree at the moment and I really struggle with writing academically. So I've had to go and find those people that can break it down for me and say to me, listen, this is where you're going wrong, so this is how to fix it.
And I'm thinking that advice would apply to anything, not just maths, but any subject, any topic, any module, any section of anything. So yeah, absolutely excellent advice. And so we have to remember that word. It's weakness.
Yeah.
That's the key word. What about you, Keith? Anything to add to that? Fantastic advice.
I just reassurance, really. I guess a couple of things. If you think it's important to what you want to do, then absolutely seek help, seek counsel. I totally buy that. But don't let it think that it's going to constrain your future ambitions. You know, my wife, bless her, if she popped around into this study now, she'd happily stick her hand in the air and say, I'm still hopeless at maths. Yet she's a very senior person in HR for one of the world's biggest companies, Mars Confectionery. So it hasn't held her back, you know. And I've got a couple of my best friends. They wouldn't contend for 1 second, you know, that they would be any good at maths, but they've had brilliant careers. It's about, you know, find what you're really good at, or find what you think you need to be good at, and work on them, focus on them, drive. There's plenty of choice. So yeah, don't feel as though that's going to hold you back.
Yeah, great. Just looking at another question that's just come through. It's a question about resilience, actually. So, you know, any tips, or how can you build yourself back up after failing or making mistakes? Obviously, we learn by our mistakes, and it's really important that we recognize that. But again, you know, how can we build that resilience to help us?
I just, it makes me laugh because I remember so much fear surrounding so many things. You have to remember, you know, regardless of what you believe, you know, we're all old souls. We realise different parts of our life we've lived before. We realise that we can just do or say something and it just seems natural to us, but we don't know where it's come from. Resilience is a part of our life that we may not have experienced before. Or it's a case that there's so much fear surrounding it, you don't know how to overcome it. So let's take, for example, Vanessa back at college. I was on license. I had a tag around my ankle. I wore the most awful outfits because I didn't have any clothes. I was homeless. I was involved in a gang. I had people watching me all the time. The stress was phenomenal. I had that negative boundaries again that I spoke about earlier, everything pouring in. You feel like it's coming in from every angle, making mistakes everywhere that were causing catastrophic effects. Then each time you realize it makes you stronger. Every single time, whether you unfortunately are in that mindset where you self-harm, whether you're using food as your enemy and you're going through a really traumatic time with your nutrition and an eating disorder, whether you're using drugs or alcohol abuse, be understanding that these are all cycles of time. And at the moment, it may be your winter, but there is a lesson in it that you have to learn. Write. I always say, write as much as you can, no matter how angry you are. My daughter's right. You know, in our house, we don't shout and scream because I was brought up in a very abusive background. So we don't shout or scream, even though you can imagine I'm quite loud. And my daughter will say, right, that's it, I'm going up to write in my notebook. And sometimes you will feel her writing, I hate my mum, she's the worst person in the world, I wish I was never born. But it's on paper, and then you go back, you read it, they were your emotions at that time. And that's the resilience. You realize it's nothing, it's gone, it was a moment in time, and you can overcome it. Always then, like I said earlier, work out how you can overcome it. Everything is figure outable, everything. I have proved that 100 million times. And even though I still get days where I think, oh my God, I can't do that. You know, like at the moment, I'm cleaning, you know, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a beauty therapist, I could have my own business, but there's all different kinds of resilience in those boundaries right here, right now, in this particular time. I have a family to feed. And so I have to take another way. I have to figure a difference out. You know, there's a gentleman I work with here. He's a barber, but he has his own business. He's had his own business for 30 years, but he is scrubbing floors at the moment with me because we've all just had to make the best of a difficult situation. So as long as you take the boundaries down, you can overcome that resilience at any point in your life. But have a strategy, work it out first before going head first into it.
Yeah, definitely. So write it down, think about it, plan. I think sometimes it's good to have that, give yourself that space, that quiet time, just to actually think about this situation, rather than just run into it full speed ahead. Just give yourself back off time to think, overview of the situation. What about you, Keith? I mean, resilience, I mean, that's, it's such a good word, but it's such a hard word, isn't it?
It's a really hard word, Tracy, and it's unbelievably topical. So these days, as a kind of leadership development consultant, I get asked this a lot, and I've been lucky that I've worked, because I didn't know the answer to this either, or I didn't think I knew the answer to it. But what I've been lucky in the last 10 odd years is I've worked with a lot of elite athletes and elite sports coaches, and I've asked them this, you know, this question. So I've got quite a bit of advice from those guys, and then quite a bit of it to myself. I think the most important thing is set goals for yourself. Yeah, have goals. Now, those goals don't have to be very, very specific. You know, I'm thinking of Vanessa's example there. You know, Vanessa's example, if we said what's her goal is obviously to be, I want to be a great mum. You know, I want to give my kids a better upbringing than I did. Okay, I can't do it this way, so I'm going to pursue another way. So set yourself goals, and if you realize you can't achieve them through one path, ask yourself the question, how could I achieve it through another path? So for example, mine would be, you know, a simple one for me is, I really like to stay fit. That's one of my goals. There are certain things like, you know, on a Saturday, I normally play golf. Well, I can't do that because the golf courses are shut. So I get my mountain bike out now instead, and I go out mountain biking for 2.5 hours every Saturday morning. So that's the way I achieve the goal through a different route. So that's number one. Second one of my favorite phrases in life is control the controllables. You know, so it's back to this kind of be proactive, work out what do I have influence over, and what don't I have influence over, and do your damnedest to influence the things you can, and don't worry about the stuff you can't. You know, because there's lots of stuff going on out there that's beyond our control. Don't worry, there's enough to worry about. So control the controllables. 3 is have boundaries. You know, so have boundaries between work or study and not work and study. So I do simple things. You know, I'm lucky that I live in a house where I've got a separate study in a separate part of the house, but I make sure that at the end of the day, I literally turn my PC off. I put my notebook in a folder. I put a folder in my bag and I zip my bag up. I lock the study door, because that tells me that that part of my day is now done. And then I'll go and do other stuff. So have boundaries and put those in and be disciplined about them, so that you're forced to concentrate on other stuff, whatever that is. It could be, you know, playing. My son, he plays loads of games on his, you know, on the TVs, but for himself. For me, it's reading the paper or watching sport on the telly. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But be regimented about it. And the fourth, and possibly the most important, is just keep reminding yourself how good you are at stuff. You know, don't lose your self-confidence. Accept that we live in as I say, I'm really old. I'm nearly 57. 2020 was without doubt the most turbulent year of my entire life. And so not letting that get to you, not letting it damage your self-confidence, I think is so important. And because that's the stuff that will give you the bravery and the courage to keep trying, to keep going. So those would be my 4 things, Tracy. That's what resilience means to me.
Yeah. So yeah, just because that's really excellent information. It's really good to able, if you remind yourself of those, it's kind of your personal strategy. So just to summarize, set goals for yourself, control the uncontrollables. So, things you can't control, don't think about those, don't let them bother you, just focus on what you can control, and think about what you can influence, and remind yourself actually that you're pretty good, and keep going. Yeah. So excellent advice, not just for students, but I think just for all of us.
I think for all of us. I promise you, the most senior of business people or people in government who I deal with are absolutely grappling with that on a personal level at this moment in time. So it's a tough one. So you're not alone, I guess, is also good advice.
And I think that's good to know. Everyone struggles with that. So yeah, I've actually got a question. James has actually asked me a question. He's dyslexic, and sometimes he feels like he's falling behind with things. So and how can you cope with that sometimes, and has it actually held you back at work? So I don't know, Vanessa, if you had maybe some ideas about that, or not just dyslexia. It could be, there's a whole range of issues that sometimes not just students but all of us have.
Well, the first thing is I know it sounds difficult to hear, but are you letting your learning difficulty, your dyslexia, control you? So my brother is in a very, very bad state. He is in a very negative state, and he has used his dyslexia, his ADHD, through his drug use as an excuse. He's a musician, very, very talented, could be the next David Bowie. He's got an amazing singing voice, but that lack of self-worth, that lack of any kind of self-respect, because everybody focused on his dyslexia. So I'm dyslexic. I have probably all sorts of different learning difficulties like the next person. We all have a limit, don't we? And again, like we just said in resilience, if we can't overcome it, you will always feel like you're behind, because we're part of a system, unfortunately, that you're measured by the way you learn. But being at college is just, you must at some point feel so relaxed that being at college, the pressure isn't on all the time. It's a lot more. I found college so much more relaxed, and I was able to speak to my tutors so much more than school. So number one, find your comfort zone. Where's your comfort zone in regards to your learning, where you're able to expand and speak to the right people? Number two, again, like we said previously, you may well find that there's a bit of tension in the way that you're learning, but explore what it is. Where am I? Because being dyslexic, you're just seeing things from a different angle, and you can't sometimes elaborate on that. So how are you able to express what you're finding difficult to the person that you're comfortable talking to? Okay. Again, if you're finding writing and English very difficult, people don't understand. There's 3 different levels of dyslexia. You've got it in maths, you've got it in English, and you've got it in language. So if it's a case that writing is not your thing, you may find that you sing, you may find that you're amazing at art. How can you express it? And you can put it on a little bit of paper, and you can go to the staff room or go to your mentor or your tutor, and they will just be able to help you. Unfortunately, we are not the Marvel team. We don't have a massive psychic ability to be able to jump in front of you and go, I know what's wrong with you. But what we can do is, as soon as you just put your hand up and say, can I have a word? I'm really struggling. Straight away, the pathway is open, and you will be able to find that way. I didn't find a way to deal with my struggles with dyslexia until I became 1920. All of that negative emotion around it really put me in a bad place to ask anybody for help. So I implore you, please just find that comfort zone. And when you feel comfortable, it might be a person that is not even at college. It might be a person that is just important to you and you can talk to them. For me, sometimes it was my grandma. She was like my mum. And then once I got it off my chest, I was able to reciprocate that. And I was able to then go and ask the right people for help. So definitely find a way of those communication pathways. And then you will find your own way in dealing with your dyslexia. Make notes all the time. English really helped me because I could highlight that in pink. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's just a colour. You might find, whether you're a boy or a girl, that pink works. You might find that working with a particular colour sheet overlay helps your sight more. So things like that. Explain, my daughter's really dyslexic. I hate saying that, really dyslexic, but she's dyslexic in all three parts. She can only read for a maximum of 5 minutes. So with public speaking exercises and reading out loud in class, that really upset her. She found a way to deal with it. She would say, "Miss, can I read page 20? Because I practiced that at home." So there's different ways of dealing with it.
Yeah. So I suppose until you identify what it is and open it up, you can't break it down into bite-sized chunks, and you deal with those small chunks as it comes. Yeah. Fantastic advice. Keith, anything from you on that?
Without a doubt. Mine's, I don't know how to overcome, because it's not something I have to deal with either myself or my family, but mine's more a message of reassurance. The best employers now, James, because you asked the question, and Tracy, the best employers now understand that truly embracing diversity and inclusivity on whatever level that might be, difference, is a good thing to do. And that it's good for two reasons. One, it's a respectful thing to do. So we're not judging people for whatever reason. But actually, there's lots of evidence now that says in business, it makes you more successful. If you have a vast range of talents and personality types, it makes you more successful. And businesses will always be swayed by that, and the public sector similarly. So a willingness to embrace it and accept it more than I've ever known in my career now is out there. So and again, just Vanessa made the right point, is don't be afraid of it. Just be brave enough to let people know that it's a challenge. The best employers would rather know that, and they will try and find a way of helping you at least manage it, if not help you overcome it. There's so many resources now that the best employers make available to staff, far, far, far more diverse than it was when I started working 30 odd years ago. So don't be embarrassed by it. Don't let it define you, but do be open and do be willing to share and find ways with whoever you go work with to make it not an issue, because it clearly doesn't have to be an issue. So that would be my advice. It's one of reassurance, Tracy.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Gosh, the time has gone so quick. I can't believe it. You guys have just been so interesting. And just really listening to what you both have to say has been so insightful, really interesting, and so cool, really so good. And I'm sure our students will really, there's some fantastic take-home advice there. So we're going to wrap up now, if that's okay with you. And I just wanted to remind the students, thank you both so much.
Pleasure.
Just so interesting, and just some really good small bits of information that our students can work with. So really pleased, thank you. I just wanted to remind the students that as part of this employability activity today, there will be some questions on the form that you need to answer after listening to this video. And also there is a link to a survey which you need to complete. So yeah, both of those things need to be done, as well as listening to this video. So Vanessa, Keith, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Really appreciate what you've shared with us. And hopefully see you guys again soon.
Hope so.
So
see you again.
Good luck
thank
to
you.
everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right then.
Good luck,
Lovely to meet you.
everybody.
Bye, Tracy.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.